Welcome everybody to our Lift Up Women in Life Sciences live event today. And today our topic is about menopause matters. And I have got three phenomenal key speakers that are going to be joining me today. And this is all in partnership with WomenWise and one of the co-founders, Sarah Williamson, which I can't wait to get introduced to you all. So as ever today, for those of you that are completely new to joining this Lift Up community group, Lift Up is all about connecting, inspiring and championing women right from academia all the way through to C-suite within the life sciences industry. And we've set up this group now nearly 18 months ago. We do a live broadcast every month. This is a special broadcast this month due to the fact that we believe menopause matters. And we are hearing and seeing it play a significant part in the workplace and it's making more and more noise in the industry. So we felt like it was a great way to address it with three key speakers today. One that is a high performance coach, very big on growth mindset. We got Lynn Sullivan as well, who is a phenomenal expert within the life sciences healthcare industry for the last 20 years, and Sarah, who is the co-founder of WomenWise. But before I bring them in, I'm going to do a little introduction into myself for those of you that have not met with me before, you're new to this group. So I'm Louise Williams. I am the managing director here at Fraser Dove International, the executive search life sciences talent consultancy. And I've been in staffing for about 19 years, 10 years in life sciences specifically. Absolutely hugely passionate about life sciences. Couldn't imagine being in any other industry. And for us, this community group has been about a group of ambassadors internally, leveraging off of the wonderful relationships for women that we've got in the industry and looking at how we can give back and help and inspire that next generation. But also cover off, really significantly important topics that are happening that we're seeing globally. So today, Menopause Matters. We're going to bring in Sarah, Lynn and Anna into this live broadcast. We've got some great questions that we're going to be covering off, not only from a workplace perspective, so menopause in the workplace, are we covering off enough initiatives? Are we supporting women? Whether you're a male or a woman that's a manager or a director of teams, is the support there internally from a corporate perspective? But we're also going to dive into the science and the biological side of the menopausal journey that women have to go through, typically at the ages of around 40 to 50. And then also about really understanding and getting into that best mindset to help navigate that journey is really, really important. So super excited. I'm going to be first up bringing Sarah into this live stream. Hello, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Lovely to see you.
Would you like to do an introduction to the audience for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Sarah Williamson, as you know, co-founder of WomenWise, which is focused on personalised menopause care for women. I came into this space from a background of being a nutritional therapist for over 20 years. And I came into it because I saw my friends struggling back in back end of 2018. And when I saw kind of the impact that menopause was having on people, then I began to do a deep dive into the kind of science behind menopause and what was causing issues and why modern women were struggling more perhaps than they should.
Yeah, 2018, that feels like that was pre-COVID. I almost feel like since the COVID period, even just menopause generally, it's just we're hearing about it so much more now, aren't we, Sarah?
Yeah, we're hearing about it hugely. And that is because, just speaking to the women I speak to on a day-to-day basis, it can be a significant factor in women's lives, affecting their work life and their personal life dramatically and those around them. So it isn't just the woman herself, it's everyone around that woman.
Yeah.
So the more we can do to get people well, the better.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree. And I think your initiative with the business has been absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. I'm also going to bring in Lynn. Lynn is a former key speaker as well of the Lift Up group around a year or so ago. So it's fabulous to have you back. But would you like to do an introduction for the audience that's joining us today?
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me back. I am the current CEO of my own business called HealthWise Solutions. I am also the executive vice president of the women's healthcare division at Mayne Pharma, where we have products to support women along their reproductive journey from contraception to menopause. I have been a healthcare executive in the pharma industry for 30 years. leading various commercial functions, including sales and marketing, strategy, operations, and training, and have been both in the US as well as globally. So in this industry, much like you, Louise, I feel very blessed to have worked in life sciences, and I've been especially fortunate to work for very patient-centric companies, which have always been focused on people's health and outcome at the paramount to everything else. So I enjoy leading people and helping them grow their careers. And it's really my greatest sense of achievement is that portion of what I've been blessed to be able to do for 30 years. So today's topic is particularly near and dear to me because it's helping to give a voice to women approaching that last decade or two of their reproductive journey, which is not so easy. And certainly we're not all as knowledgeable about what these symptoms are, which we go through and we don't realize we're going through them. And it's really a biological change. But once we understand it and seek help through multiple different ways, we can all feel more like ourselves again as we kind of continue to mature. So I'm really happy to be here in this discussion.
Thank you, Lynn. And I think similar to Sarah, it's so lovely when you're able to do something, and now you've moved into the CEO role of the HealthWise to do something that you're so passionate about as well. And all the conversations I've had with you both, you can really see the passion coming through. And very similarly with Anna, I've known now for just over a year, hugely passionate, top high performing coach. So Anna, would you love to do an introduction to the audience for us?
Of course. Hi, everybody. So I'm Anna. I'm a high performance coach and I am founder of a growth academy called 80. I am really passionate about the link between mental fitness and performance, and passionate about upskilling and helping leaders and their teams to break through the many barriers that can hold us back. Those barriers include things from imposter syndrome to perfectionism, fixed mindset, but obviously the general curveballs that life can throw at us, right? And menopause is one of those curveballs. So I deliver programs into companies, work with some great companies, LinkedIn, L'Oreal, Boots, and some smaller companies across multiple industries. And my background is that I actually used to work in the corporate world, which is why I'm so passionate about leadership and motivating and upskilling teams. 15 years starting at L'Oreal, moving into various global leadership roles, and then in my own journey hit a crossroad where I was struggling with my own barriers, knew that I needed a vehicle to change my mindset, got a coach, then realized, right, this is my world. I need to become a coach and trainer. And since then, focused quite a lot of time in the mental health world, very passionate about helping people transform their lives, overcoming anxiety, depression, all that kind of thing, of which there are many barriers, but then moved into performance, hence my passion about this link between mental fitness and performance. Upskilled again, became a master NLP practitioner, and from there I'm doing what I'm doing now. So yeah, absolutely love the domain I'm in, passionate about helping women and men and teams and
everybody. I can say that the passion is 100% there, and I think this has been such an exciting conversation that I think back in November time, the four of us got together and we were a little bit like, wow, from a menopause perspective, there's so many different angles, but to build those foundations, even earlier stages, which Anna, you're going to touch upon later, around the mindset and the mental fitness and the best kind of position you can get yourself into as you're going through that biological change, Sarah. And so many people say, what is wrong with me? Well, there is nothing wrong with you. It's a biological change. You've just got to understand what's in your toolkit, what can you use that's going to help you navigate this in the best way possible. Then we've got Lynn from a business as well perspective as to what initiatives out there should companies be thinking about to support women, and for them to feel like they've got a community, whether it's internally in their organization or externally, that they can come to as well for advice. So I'm really excited about how this conversation is going to unfold. But as always, for the audience here, say hello and help build your network, right? There's some we often get up to 100 comments going. So keep this comments feed going. Say where it is that you're dialing in from. We often get a really good global reach, which is one of the reasons why we also do it late in the day from a GMT time. We've actually got Lynn in the US. So say where it is that you're dialing in from. And if you've got any questions as we move throughout this broadcast, we're happy to get interactive towards the second half. So if you've got a question, put a Q in front of your question in the comments. So it'll make it a little bit easier for me to pull it out and to navigate through the comments as we go. So I would like to dive into some of the comments already coming through, actually. Just say hello to Josh. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've also got Corianne, who's really looking forward to this session, which is fab. We've got Rosie, who was one of my previous co-hosts of Lift Up. She's traveling the world. I think she's in South America right now, which is very exciting. We've got Sean here as well today. Labette, who's also an old key speaker of ours that joined us over a year ago now. So lovely to have you back, Labette. And Chloe here as well in London. So yeah, keep the comments coming. Say where you're dialing in from, pop a Q in front of your question, and that will help us get through them. But for now, I'm going to dive straight into a question, and I'm going to fire this one at you, Sarah, so be prepared. Okay. I do think that kind of this is probably quite a nice question to start with for the audience, right? But what is perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause? What's that about? What typically is kind of the time frame in which this can happen? Are there symptoms? What do people generally see? How would you summarize these phases?
Okay, so from a kind of, we're looking at the basic biology of what is perimenopause, what is menopause, and what are you when you're postmenopausal. Your menopause is actually only one day in your life, which might be shocking, bearing in mind the number of conversations going on around menopause, but it's the day that you haven't had a menstrual cycle for a year. That is technically the day you're in menopause, and after that you are postmenopausal. But perimenopause is where you are experiencing the beginning of the retiring of your ovaries. So they stop producing high levels of sex hormones and they begin to retire, and you move into a steady state. And for most of us women, we have not lived in a steady state since we were young children. So it is a really interesting foray into a new space. But while we're moving to that steady state, what happens is women ovulate more sporadically. And that means you get a change in the ratio of hormones. So you end up with estrogen in the early stages of perimenopause being relatively high. Some people call it estrogen dominance. And progesterone, which you produce when you ovulate, lower, or up and down lower. Mm-hmm. And generally that trajectory continues, so that the progesterone drops off first, and then over those years, your estrogen begins to drop off too. The most common menopause symptoms that people think of, like hot flushes and things like that, are low estrogen symptoms, and they tend to come later. But the early perimenopause symptoms that I see tend to be more mental health and anxiety-based symptoms. They come in the first part of that perimenopause as those progesterone levels change. And that is because of the changes and the impact that those changing hormones have on your brain chemistry. But so menopause is one day. Perimenopause goes on for quite a long time, about 8 to 10 years averagely. And then postmenopause, you can still experience fluctuations, although you're not getting a cycle. So, but slowly that simmers down to a steady state.
Yeah, thank you. That's very well articulated and a very quick top line summary in regards to that. I think one of the questions that probably flows quite well into that then is and then I can come to you as well, Anna and Lynn, afterwards, but from a struggles and from a hurdles perspective. So you act, Sarah, if it's correct for me to say, as a bit of a coach alongside the WomenWise. You're speaking to a lot of your clients and to women regularly. What are the sort of common behaviors that I guess that you see that are people that are transitioning in or are going through that journey?
So the common things that women start off with, and it really is the mental health aspect, is the thing that really bothers women the most. It's the thing, like if you feel happy and joyous and you're sleeping really well and everything's going well, you can almost tolerate, a hot flush is not going to be such a big deal. Maybe 20 hot flushes is, but the odd hot flush is not going to cause you an issue. So actually it's the mental health aspect. And what we see are things like increased anxiety, sleeplessness, because of the changes in the brain chemistry. We also see brain fog, which women find at work absolutely devastating to their self-confidence, because they can be in the room and suddenly realize they can't remember what's said, and then the anxiety kicks in and then they can't carry on. I spoke to a lady who head of HR, and she said, I can't do disciplinaries because I can't remember what's just said. And then my anxiety kicks in and I can't remember what's just said. So learning that those things are resolvable and it's not something you have to tolerate, and and B, understanding the biology behind those and what other levers outside estrogen, progesterone, testosterone also you can pull to improve your underlying health, which will, if your underlying health is good, you will fly through the menopause transition. If you're struggling with underlying health, then you will find it harder. And then we need to straighten those out. And you can. There are so many things to pull here. So behaviors that we see that women are struggling with, they tend to take a step back at work. So they tend to hide behind, they won't go for a promotion and things, or they go part-time, or in any way they can alleviate that sense of overwhelm that's going on. And that also plays out at home. So they tend to pull back socially as well. So you find their lives getting a bit smaller and a bit smaller in a bid to cope. So we're all about getting them back out there, feeling fantastic and knowing how to do it.
100%. And I've got a great question actually that kind of relates to that, toolkit mindset wise with Anna. But I think, Lynn, just touching upon what Sarah was saying, do you, from a common behaviours perspective in a workplace, is there any significant stories or themes that you've kind of seen and felt working in a corporate environment in the US?
Yes, and I'll comment to that. I first want to say, to hear Sarah describe that so clearly, for anyone that's listening right now, how often do women feel these symptoms and we didn't know it was due to menopause? And more importantly, we go to talk to our doctors and they don't quite echo what Sarah just said to us. They sometimes say, oh yeah, it's tough getting old. And yeah, this happens. They don't necessarily attribute it to the fact this is something that we can treat. So I think to your point, in our workplace, there certainly is a lot more that we need to do. We need to better understand from a DEI and B perspective that women who are experiencing these menopausal symptoms, they need to be also accommodated in many cases, whether it's temperature controls in the office or whether it's, flexible work schedules, or in some case, more comfortable uniforms, if in fact the uniform is what's causing additional problem, maybe with the hot flashes. Those types of actions can be taken, but I think first and foremost, there needs to be knowledge that's delivered into the workplace, because we are having women who don't realize these symptoms that Sarah just talked about that eventually make them take less of a step from a corporate perspective, either backwards or out, or prevent them from going forward. I think at that point, we really need some acknowledgement in just corporate understanding that these things exist, and women have to understand it from our own community that it's okay to have these things treatable.
100%. It's the awareness, the education, the acknowledgement, and then it's the support and the communities and the initiatives. But so much of this, so Anna, I know you do a lot around imposter syndrome and anxiety, and it feels certainly probably in the perimenopause piece, in that kind of build up, which, as you said so eloquently put, Sarah, that is often the longest duration. If you're looking at those three phases, that the anxiety and the imposter syndrome, I imagine, really hits. So what are your thoughts with that, Anna?
Well, I think we just need to acknowledge, as I'm sure we already have, that this is a real thing. This isn't something that we're making up. These symptoms are real. But something I feel passionately about is that women, as a result of how they approach or choose to respond to menopause, can exacerbate or mitigate their symptoms. They can't get rid of them because this is a real thing, right? But it's amazing how the lens we choose to view life through, how much that can influence the result or the outcome or the experience. So for me, there's a concept I just want to introduce here for anyone who hasn't heard this, of keeping above the line. So this is a bit of a macro tip to anyone listening in, no matter what age you are, if you're a woman. When we're above the line, when we talk about this more generally, it means you're taking personal responsibility, you're in your power and you're taking action. And when you are below the line, you are making excuses, you're in denial, you are blaming. Now, when it comes to menopause, of course, a few ways of keeping above the line are choosing what action can I take. Now, we're going to later, I know, share, of course, some strategies, and we'll talk more about that then. But it's really important to stay above the line, because when we're above the line and we're taking action, or we're maybe waking up and putting a bit of extra effort into how we're choosing to start our day, making sure we're influencing what we can, controlling the controllables is a big thing here, to stay above the line. When we keep ourselves above that line, which by the way is undoubtedly going to be harder when we're experiencing these symptoms, but it's possible, whatever that context is, it's possible, then we are going to feel more powerful. Now, when we feel more powerful, we can't create the same level of anxiety or stress than we do when we are below the line. So we've got to stay in the driving seat as much as we can with this. I'm not saying it's easy, but there are certainly things that we can do to help ourselves.
Yeah, 100%, Anna, and I think you've rolled really nicely into this question around people helping themselves from that mindship, perspective, both at home and professionally. Yes. I know we've previously talked about this this foundation that you describe. I think it's an excellent way of describing that the more solid foundation that you've got going into perimenopause, or being aware of what some of those symptoms and common behaviors are, if you can kind of strengthen your mindset and that foundation prior to going in, you're more likely to navigate that journey more successfully. You may be able to put that more eloquently than I can. But,
yeah, sure. I'm going to share an analogy which I'm sure is going to be quite easy for everyone to understand. So look at the Shard in London. We all know or can imagine how deep the foundations of the Shard must be to hold that beautiful building up stably and safely. Now, we all as humans have psychological foundations. The foundations that we have as humans can be split very simply into the general beliefs we have in life and our self-esteem. If we have got somebody who already has lower self-esteem and a number of limiting beliefs holding them back, which by the way, of course, both of those are quite common, then what we find is the building part, which represents our thinking, when there is a curveball in life, which would of course be bad weather or a storm, right, for the Shard, but when there is a curveball, for example, the menopause, and we've not got those deep foundations pinning us down, we are going to experience that wobbly building. Our unhelpful thinking styles will increase, and they will create and exacerbate the symptoms that are already there. So we see things like imposter syndrome tuning up even more, keeping us stifling our own growth because of maybe fear of getting ourselves out there. So just as one small example of how we can prevent ourselves from maybe dealing with menopause in a more powerful way. But people don't get taught this stuff. I'm really passionate about getting this stuff out there. Today's going to be really valuable for anybody listening in.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Anna. I think that there's going to be some great takeaways from this conversation. I'm also very conscious of the fact that we've had lots of comments coming through to the audience. It's very easy for us to, for me, definitely, I know I'm getting carried away and I get deep into this, but great mix of experience. Thank you, Emily, for joining us today from, I think, Switzerland here. Hello from Savina in Boston. We've got Andrew, who is our CCO, who's actually in New York at the moment. Thanks for joining us. We've got Sheila from Cambridge. We've got some, we've just got so many coming through. So I do apologize if I can't get round to everybody and get everybody into the live stream here. But David's got a comment. Employers should be introducing a menopause policy for HR teams and managers. It should outline potential adjustments that can be made to support people with menopause-related symptoms. I completely agree, David. I think that, Lynn's got some quite good thoughts process in regards to, from a corporate point of view, from an initiatives perspective. Lynn, what are your comments around that specifically?
Well, I think just as David pointed out, first, there's a need. Yeah. Secondly, there is not a lot of existing policies today in a workplace that people can cut and paste into their own environment. But there was a time where mental health didn't have a lot of cut and paste policies to help people there either, or women in the workplace. So we have to start somewhere, and that journey starts today. So the policy piece, I think, taking that first step, which is to help to educate, that has got to be a foundational part. Working with your people and cultures individual, your HR team, if you will, is a great first place to start that journey. Also helping to recognize not just that we as women going through this stage of our life need accommodations, but maybe a reminder that this is actually costing employers money. Women are generally out of work. There was a study done by Mayo Clinic that was a fairly large study, and the cost of women being out of work due to menopausal symptoms is about $1.8 billion per week. Now, in addition to that, they have medical expenses that your employer is paying. That was more like 24.8 billion US dollars.
Wow.
And if that
Wow.
number wasn't enough for you, when you look at the total annual, economic burden associated to menopause, it was extrapolated to 26 billion US dollars.
Yeah.
So if your company says, why should I make these accommodations? Remind them what an impact it has on the bottom line to have women in the workplace, and more importantly, to have women at the higher ranks in a workplace, because we all know when women rise to those senior and executive levels, you get actually an improvement in your overall growth of a company. And we know that by measurement. Even from a McKinsey trial that kind of says those companies do better financially when you have women in those top ranks. So there's education and there's reason why to act. And those are the bottom dollars that usually motivate a company forward.
Yeah, I think the reason why and the purpose is fundamentally the most important aspect to get across. That thought leadership, the dynamic of having a diverse panel at management leadership level. We already know we can see sometimes a 50% drop from managers to directors from a women's perspective globally. But the why is really important. Anna, did you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's making me think that it's actually really easy, unfortunately, for women to stay below the line because there's not enough support. Remember, I said earlier, below the line includes denial, making excuses maybe for not taking action. Well, if we don't feel that it's well understood, if people aren't understanding me, it's going to be embarrassing. Maybe there's shame around speaking up at work as to what my challenges are. So I think so many women are keeping themselves below the line, and it therefore will be exacerbating anxiety and feelings of not being worthy enough and all this other stuff. That's inevitable.
And are you hearing that as well, Sarah? I think previous conversations, that feels like some of the feedback you've had.
A lot of that. And actually the women that we see, because they've chosen to take a personalized route, so they've come on board, we test them, we look at their underlying health, they are taking those steps. And the difference, even a very short amount of time, like I've had a couple of women within 8 weeks are back to work. Now that is a really, really impressive. And they ring me from work saying, oh, I'm at work. And so that is fantastic. And we see women who are, are stepping away from work, who are now back in the game and back ready to share their skills. And they feel so much more confident. And also they're then able to communicate that at work, because the work can see that transformation, that when given the tools and the support, these women are back and then supporting other people in the business. So they're
in the driving seat, Sarah, those women. And not everyone can afford to do that necessarily, but there's other strategies to feel in the driving seat.
Strategies. There are loads. There's an army full of strategies that are not just go to your doctor and see what they've got on offer.
100%. I think, Lynn, you were saying that yesterday, weren't you, when we had a little bit of a chat, and you were kind of saying it's not all about the HRT, it's not all about the drugs, and that's where all the, the kind of the mindset and the diet even, right? We haven't even touched upon diet, but Lynn, I think you shared something around the HRT. There was some interesting statistics where you were saying, is it 50% of people with HRT? I don't want to go off them if they're not right, but do you remember? You're going to remember better than me.
I think a lot of the gist of what we talked about is there's never one strategy that works for everyone. So people who seek therapy may do well on hormonal treatments. Some may not do well on hormonal treatments and need a different type of treatment, like bioidentical hormones. And then there's also, the other type of engagement, much like Anna just spoke about, which is the mind control piece of it. But I think the important part I was going to comment that Sarah said, like, again, for those on the line, you should appreciate the words she's saying, because sometimes we don't get this from our physicians. Our physicians, we have to understand, were trained in medical school. For the people who are working today, 80% of them, that's an 8 to 0, 80% of them did not get this type of hormonal training in medical school, which now means it's not through any fault of their own necessarily, but they don't know how to have these conversations. So as women, we have to seek people like Sarah who really understand how to customize medicine. And for the gals on the line, guys, this is real. 40% of us make mistakes at work and we think, oh gosh, we beat ourselves up, when in fact it's a hormonal flux and we're just making those mistakes because our hormones aren't feeding our brain correctly. Another 11% of those or stepping back from opportunities in the workplace because we feel like, oh gosh, we can't possibly go forward, right?
Mm.
Lean in sort of Tierra complex. We can't go
Yeah.
forward because we're already making mistakes.
Yeah.
And I mean, 8% of those end up resigning their position, or 40% lose interest in their job.
Yeah.
We have to change this.
And then you think about, you just think about that talent as well. That's, it's like it's in them, right? They've spent years getting to the level in which they're highly valuable. They've got the experience, and then it's almost getting lost, isn't it? It's lost in the industry or lost in the workplace because of that, which is such a shame. I had a gentleman come to me, I may have shared with you before, and it's, a GSK top 5 pharma about a year ago. And I remember him saying to me, this menopause piece is such an important topic. He managed a team of about 30 people and said that one of his highest performers just took an absolute dip and was a little bit like, I don't know why. And for months, I think because she didn't necessarily voice up or felt comfortable or felt there was an issue, or maybe like, you were previously saying, didn't actually understand the biological side. But it all came out in the end after, almost a year that she was going through the menopause. And, he said to me, it's mind blowing because from a management perspective, I didn't really know how to support that individual. I didn't feel very well equipped or trained to be able to provide the support that was required. And neither did I even notice it because I've not been trained to ever notice it or trained to even question it. So it's a really important topic and initiative because we can't afford to lose that amount of women in the workplace, clearly, right? We haven't really touched on the biological side here, Sarah. So I'd just love to come to you a little bit, just to explain what WomenWise is all about. And you were talking to me previously about diets and things like that to be aware of.
Yeah. So basically, what we're looking at here is, as I said earlier, it's your fundamental health and how good that is that will take you through the menopause. So you can prepare for your menopause in your 30s. You do not have to just wait till you rock up with symptoms, and then you should sail through no problem. So what we're looking at here is understanding that health. So we're looking at things like, how well is your thyroid functioning? How well is your cortisol pattern functioning? So for most, 7 out of every 10 women I see, cortisol, which gets a very bad rap, but it's completely necessary for life, should follow a natural pattern over the day. And 7 out of every 10 women I see do not follow that pattern, which means they have interrupted sleep, low energy, inability to focus, fog. We also get women gaining a lot of weight, which, it shouldn't technically affect their performance, but it does because it affects how they feel about themselves, the change in their perception, and also it feeds into brain chemistry issues with brain fog. So when we look at those things, you start to see those symptoms. Those are signs that things aren't right. And it's well worth doing whatever is in your power to investigate those as you can and get support in making sure that you're eating properly and, useful use of kind of rebalancing in natural ways, perhaps, all the way through from things like acupuncture, all the way through to herbal medicine, and all of those things you can try before you ever have to rock up to your doctor. You have the power if you're prepared to go and do the work. And there's lots of us out there talking about this now, so you should be able to access that.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Sarah. And we've had some great comments just backing up the things that you've literally just said. And also, I think, Lynn, there was some great comments around your response as well to David. But thanks for the conversation. Such a broad audience, very important topic. I think Rosie's here just said, just start. Love that, Lynn. We've also had Thomas Dove here, who is co-founder of Fraser Dove, saying amazing discussion. David's point, absolutely creative policy, and Lynn's discussions about taking the first step in the right direction was superb. We've had Agnes here. I've known Agnes in the UK for a long time. Thanks for joining us. It's about the choice women have. I strongly believe all options, including HRT, have to be available to all. And I think, we previously talked about the fact that there is no one size that fits all here. HRT could work marvelously for some women and completely not for others, right? I think that's what's great about WomenWise, if I can jump in with that, Sarah, because it's personalised, isn't it?
Really personal. We're totally agnostic about HRT.
Yeah.
If it works for you, take it. If you can't take it or you don't want to take it, we've got lots of other ways of supporting you with or without HRT.
Excellent. So I'm going to come to you, Anna, with this question around it's kind of the mindset piece, actually, because we were thinking if someone is struggling with their mindset or mental health, perhaps in the first place, are they more likely to struggle through menopause? What tools can they put in place beforehand? I think we're seeing this increasing, rate of mental health, right? And in the workplace as well. We're also seeing it potentially because people are feeling like they're embracing vulnerability. They're feeling like they can talk about it more than ever, which is brilliant. But what are your thoughts around this question?
So going back to that analogy of the shard, we want to be proactively at all ages of life, before we even get to the menopause, if anyone younger is listening in, be deepening our foundations. Well, how do we do that? Obviously, you can do deep mindset work with coaches, but what's something that you guys can take away today that's going to help? Well, we need to be working on, as I call it, topping up your self-esteem battery. We want to create that high self-esteem from within. It's going to gradually deepen those foundations. So just reflecting on one thing you have done every single day, at the end of your day, find something you've done well and ask yourself, what does that say about me? For example, if I make the time to play with my children when I'm really busy, what does it say about me? I am a great mum. Now, this is alien to most people. So this is just one little tip that's going to gradually help you deepen those foundations. As I said, of course, you can do deeper work if you want and need to. The other thing is choose how you are thinking about menopause, because we are what we think. I said earlier, we can exacerbate those unhelpful symptoms. So let's choose to think powerfully about menopause. See it in a helpful way. It's part of being a woman. It's part of a journey. It's something I can absolutely approach and take action with if I upskill myself and get the right resources. If you see it like that, you're going to have an easier journey without a doubt, even if you're simply
positive lenses.
Yeah,
as you say.
it's amazing how much it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think culturally in this country, and it's not just this country, we as a society have quite a negative outlook on menopause, and therefore without realizing it, because I've heard friends say, oh my gosh, I am dreading it. It is going to be anxiety is going to be through the roof. We are exacerbating our symptoms right there
before it's even happened. Yeah.
So we've got to be careful and mindful of how we think about it.
Yeah, Sarah, I'll come to you. Have you got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You are what you think, and there is no denying it. I'm a nutritional therapist. I think diet's incredibly important. There is no diet, no supplement I can give you that will outstrip negative thinking. It doesn't matter how big it is. We actually do focus a little bit on that. Nothing as in depth as Anna, but we make sure we're talking about mindset and get people in that good place and with the tools that they have. And doing something is better than doing nothing, rather than this all or nothing attitude. Like I must do everything, otherwise it's not worth it. So 100%, it is the most powerful tool you have, and using it in the right way is so important at this time.
And can we please remind ourselves that thoughts aren't fact? So when we all, as we all do, have those moments of self-deprecation and beating ourselves up, that thought in your head is not a fact. And just start by rationalizing in that very simple way, and it will somehow neutralize to an extent that thought and the impact it's having.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant advice.
And we've got reality.
Perception's reality. Yeah, love that. We've got some here. Love the start. Early approach. Prevention is better than a cure, or better than cure. So thanks very much, Sheila, for sharing that. Rosie as well. Love this blend of expertise across Sarah, Lynn, and Anna's advice. I think it's 100% correct, Rosie. It's kind of what got us excited when we first started having those conversations. A question for you then, Lynn, from a corporate point of view. I'm just thinking that what advice would you give individuals that maybe don't have the initiatives, or they don't feel like they've got the internal communities and a workplace environment set up? Like, what advice would you give to women that feel like they're struggling at the moment?
I think if there's not a community, I would always suggest seeking peer-to-peer, because the louder the voice is, the better it gets heard. So that would still be my first line of defense. But I think partnering with your HR department, because most companies do have a strong desire to ensure that they're pushing on DEI and B, this is one of those places that can really welcome this conversation and help create a path through an organization to hearing the needs of women, who going through perimenopause and its effect in the workplace. I really think that's a really good place to start this discussion, because just like there was a time where we didn't talk about other issues that crept into the workplace, whether that was mental health, whether that was, women in this space. The conversation has to start, and it has
Yeah.
to start somewhere. So this idea of being kind of above the line, as Anna says,
Mhm.
being bold. I mean, that's who we are as women. We are strong, independent women. That is part of why we're in this community, is to help women move forward. Be that
Yeah.
bold leader that says, hey, dear company, let me educate you on where this takes place in your company and how it impacts your company. And more
Yeah.
importantly, how it's impacting maybe me as the person going through this. How can we help people like me be better supported through this journey? Because it's no different than other major illnesses that we support people through today.
Yeah, absolutely true. And what's for anybody in the audience, whether they're a director, a manager, they are a leader of a team, or from a HR perspective, do you feel like, is there somebody that really should own the responsibility of setting up these initiatives? Like, where does it start internally from your perspective? Bit of a bold out there kind of question, but
I believe it does start in your kind of people and culture area, because they set the actual policies and they start to have that discussion around regulation. So at some point, perhaps your employer legal team comes in to help put this into a more strong practice outlined by actual regulations and policies. But again, I think your first step is really to partner with your HR team to help them understand that there's a need for this.
Yeah, great advice there. Great advice there, Lynn. And Sarah, I'm thinking from a UK perspective that I feel like there is a significant awareness that's being pushed out by the government, probably in the last 18 months. I even just on my journey in this morning, I was listening to Heart Radio, and I was hearing them saying about the increase of anxiety with menopause. It was on the news, actually, and then the HRT not always having the most positive effect. Is there any thoughts and statistics that you're seeing from a UK perspective that's making you feel like actually, companies are embracing this more, or actually governments are taking this more seriously?
I think it's slightly controversial at the moment. I think there is a lot of noise. In the UK, I think we're leading the noise, but there's a lot of noise. But the kind of story currently is, take HRT, everything's going to be fine. And we know that's not true. In the UK, the statistics are over half of women who take HRT don't experience a significant benefit. And that's because those foundational health pillars and the thought processes and all the other things aren't in line. But also there's now a move to bring in something called cognitive behavioral therapy. Most of you know about that. Instead of HRT, for when they're trying to deal with women who are struggling with the mental health side of things. I think there's some controversy about whether that's a finance-related decision rather than a great decision based on the medicine and everything else out there. So those choices really need to be made on an individual basis. And the availability of CBT in the UK is limited by just by dint of availability. So again, it's a difficult area. I'm glad it's being talked about, but I do meet a lot of women who are kind of disappointed they took HRT and they didn't turn into Davina. And that it is because it is not a magic sticking plaster.
It's not one.
Don't pull the other levers. If you don't look at mindset, if you don't take action, if you don't live above the line, if you don't deal with your diet, if you don't work out what's going on for you and invest in yourself, finding that out, then of course HRT is not going to resolve. You can get in a bulk of estrogen, but if you're getting up every morning with bad attitude and wonky cortisol, it's not going to solve it.
And from a dietary perspective, are there any tips there that you've got that you would give advice on from a dietary perspective?
The things I see, so because the weight gain comes for a lot of women, what they tend to do is restrict and fast harder. Fasting's very popular right now, and they fast. I've been looking at fasting since before it was a thing in 2009. Right at this period of time, if you are very stressed and then you add fasting into the mix, for most women I see, that is a lethal combination. So my recommendation is go old school. Eat protein at every single meal and eat 3 meals a day. That is has a calming effect on the system, because it doesn't have to then deal with the stress of, right, when am I next eating? Okay, I've got to balance my blood glucose for 9 hours. Not eating.
Yeah.
So not snacking, not eating rubbish, and giving yourself a decent portion of protein with each meal can make a dramatic difference.
Yeah.
And there is such an important link between us needing to keep our stress levels low. I mean, the obvious reason.
Come to you with that one.
Right? Yeah, but there's such an intrinsic link between between mental fitness and high performance. There's a huge link between the two. And I think what we're acknowledging here, of course, is that some symptoms of menopause are absolutely going to result in high levels of stress. Some of them out of our control, and some of them, unfortunately, we may be exacerbating because we're increasing that imposter syndrome or the dread of speaking up in front of the team or whatever it might be. If you imagine a stressometer that goes from 0 to 10, and 10 is the highest stress level, the higher that we climb as any human up that scale, the more likely we're going to be making decisions based on emotion, not fact. We'll be more likely to be irrational, believing the stories in our head. In short, we want to be doing all we can to operate down the bottom end, which is, as I call it, the high performance zone, which all us humans want to be operating in, where we have got clarity of thought, or as much as we can do, given the circumstance of the menopausal symptoms, right? We need to influence getting ourselves down there, and really move away from, because it's very easy, I think, to blame when you're having a hard time with hormones and things like that. It's easy to blame that as to why I'm stressed, but let's take more accountability and take action to maybe do some extra things. I know it's extra effort to stay above that line, to keep our stress level lower, even if that's really hard work, which I know it can be for some women in particular.
Yeah.
I think that's gone, Lynn.
What the last two have said as well. I know we've discussed kind of HRT therapies. Are they, the right thing? Are they not the right thing? I would encourage you also, not all HRT therapies are the same. There is a number of different ones within each type that you're looking at that may be a better fit for you. So unfortunately, we as women have a complex journey in just about every aspect of our life, and the treatments for perimenopausal symptoms is not any different. It means that we have to seek really good care, have someone like Sarah who really can help guide us on this path individually, and pick those right therapies and combine these right therapies cognitively and keeping us above the line, along with treating the actual real symptoms that sometimes need a chemical change to help us feel better. So it's maximizing all the tools at our disposal and just have an understanding of what those symptoms are, which I think a lot of women don't know.
100%.
We don't blame ones. Like, we know the that one's obvious, but all these other ones, ladies, start to read about these symptoms because you go, oh my gosh, yeah, my hair is thinning. Oh my God, my nails have been weak. That's so true. I didn't know that. And my idea of brain fog, you don't even realize it until you clear it back up. And then you go, oh my gosh, I can fire on all cylinders again. You don't know until you treat it.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry, my light keeps going off in this room. But yeah, no, 100%. I think that for me already, the key takeaway in this conversation is the fact that there is no one size fits all, and there is no one remedy to it all, right? It's the biological journey that people face that could have, from a mental fitness, from a biological, from potentially a drug perspective. There's so many different angles in which you need to consider. I also love the thought around, don't wait until you're in it to then try and suss out what route you should maybe take, or what you need to be thinking about or mindful of at that point. I think, if people, even prior to getting in, can start thinking about, well, what mindset do I really need to train myself into being? The above the line thinking, that real kind of personal taking responsibility of my stress barometer and all. It's almost like you're training your body up, so when you're in the actual transition, hopefully the journey should be smoother. I think that's a real key, I feel like, takeaway from my perspective. And
Louise, I think we need to be really realistic with the discomfort and the courage required to stay above that line. It's not going to be easy. It's not. I wish it was, but it's not. It's going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes you're going to have a conversation with your leader or manager that you maybe be a bit uncomfortable having, but you are in your power by having it. You are staying above the line by being open and communicating the issues to get a better result or better experience for yourself. So it's not going to be easy getting above that line, but you can do it.
Yeah. Love that. Positive lenses. as we keep saying. But we've got some great comments here from people. We're not a monolith. Knowledge will help women make informed decisions that are right for them. Education is key. Completely. Dixie, thank you very much for sharing that. We've also got Louise here. I feel like I know Louise May from nearly 5-6 years ago, HR manager. So I think this is the Louise, but thank you so much for joining us. I'm joining from Connecticut, USA. I joined to learn more as a HR professional, wanting to introduce more information on this topic. It's been really valuable and informative. So thank you so much. We have got a question here from the audience that's just said, what are the best ways to reduce stress? I'm going to come to you, Anna, with this one, if that's okay, talking about your stress barometer.
Yeah, no problem. Well, there's a lot of answers that I can give to this. The first one is just check in with yourself. Are you blaming some external factor as to why you're feeling the stress? Because just by switching that lens and recognizing, if I share a quick philosophy, for me, 5% of life happens to me. 95% is how I choose to respond to it. This is how I've learned to live my life the majority of the time. I didn't used to, by the way, at all. But if you can think, can I switch my lenses and view this in a different way and move away from the blame, take more ownership of where you are on that stressometer, because it's probably not something else making you stressed, which might be a bit challenging for people to hear. It's probably the way you're thinking about it. And then you've got other things, of course, you can do, which you've probably heard before. You need to probably take a step back to seek the bigger picture, do some breath work. That really helps. Box breathing, 4 in, hold your breath for 4 out. Just is going to help reduce the pace. And by the way, the more we can expand in general, the more powerful we feel. We increase levels of testosterone and we decrease the stress. There's so many other things like going out in nature. I could go on, but we haven't got the time. I hope that's helpful.
That's super helpful. Thank you for the question, Lucy, and thanks for sharing that, Anna. I actually do the breathing quite, and this is rather a random thing to share, but sometimes I find I lay in bed and then suddenly my head's going around with all these things, and then I'm suddenly there and I'm like taking this massive deep breath in because I just find it calming. And my husband's like, "What are you doing?" Like, it's like, sound like an animal. I'm like, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just trying to, this is my de-stress. This is taking a deep breath in," but it works for me, actually. I do that. And yeah, the walking, nature is always a great, I think getting your exercise up, getting some fresh air, mindfulness is definitely a big one to add as well.
Just taking action is the overriding answer.
Yeah.
Let's not, otherwise you exacerbate the stress, right?
Own it, do something about it. Completely agree. I think we could go on all day, the 4 of us, but we've got some great comments. If we haven't been able to answer all of your questions, then we'll try and go back through some of the comments later. But thank you so much for sharing those. I am going to come to a question though, a last question from you all, if that's okay, for the audience today. What would be your top 3 key takeaways and advice you'd give to the audience around menopause? And that could be anything. It could be work related. It could be, it could be mindset related. I'll come to you, Sarah, first in regards to this.
Firstly, and it's probably reiterating a lot of what's said, but this is what I've been thinking about. Do not let fear get in the way of you doing something about it. You don't have to settle. You don't have to white knuckle through it. You don't have to pretend it's not happening. Don't let fear get in the way. Secondly, from my perspective, if you can afford it and you can afford to speak to somebody like me or a nutritional therapist or acupuncturist, herbalist, whatever you like, do it. The investment is a small investment by comparison to what you're getting out. And thirdly, I think for many women, this is a moment of awakening. It's the moment they start to look up and out from the world and look up and out from kids and work and things and look at what they would like to see different in the world. And if you can get yourself physically and mentally fit, you're at that time of life where women can make the biggest difference right now. This is the moment for us. So that rather than run and hide, let's deal with it. Let's make the difference.
I feel empowered. I feel like inspired with what you've just said then. So I love that. Thank you so much. I'm going to come to you, Lynn, with the same question.
Yes, I think it's been said well, so I won't belabor the point other than to say, really, ladies and folks that are on this phone, our gentlemen, thank you for being on, but educate yourself on what these symptoms look like, because they're not they're not just the ones that we think of when we think of perimenopause. They go much deeper than that. So educate yourself on what the symptoms are. Just as one example, even having UTIs multiple times and not figuring out why these aren't resolving with antibiotic treatment. Sometimes it's because you have to treat the hormones first in order to treat that sort of recurrent UTI. So even something as weird as that, like, gosh, how could that be related to perimenopause? And in fact, it is. So educate yourself on the symptoms, seek treatment. I think, Sarah again said it so well, seek treatment. If you're fortunate enough to be able to find like a functional med doc who really specializes and customizes this and are ahead of the curve when it comes to treating this, amazing. But there's also a lot of physicians. I know here in the US, we look at the National Association of Menopausal Physicians, so NAMS, we look at those physicians and they're really ahead of the curve in understanding how to treat. And the final part is finding that community of other people that are kind of suffering the same symptoms. Not, as Anna said, we don't want to wallow underneath the line with that, but rather pull those folks up so that all of you are above the line as you're looking at your symptoms, as you're looking at how your life journey looks at this point, and learning how to handle that. So those are my 3 key takeaways.
Thank you, Lynn. And I think so often with what you just said there at the end, also the observation and the awareness that, this doesn't just impact, right, the woman or the person. It can impact the family, the husband, it's beyond, it's just like so much of a bigger thing, isn't it? So, that really resonated with me when you just commented on that. But thank you very much for sharing, Lynn. And Anna, of course, I'll come to you with this question.
Well, my macro answer to that, of course, is to reiterate again, you've got to stay above the line. Don't beat yourself up when you fall below. We always do as humans, but do as best as you can. Keep above the line, whether you're an individual, a woman listening to this, however old you are, before perimenopause, perhaps. The sooner you can get above the line, the better on this. And for companies, get above the line. What action can you be taking to help this situation and to improve performance, results, and the fulfillment levels of women in your business? And I think drilling down to 2 more sort of specific ones, I talked about the foundations earlier. Let's be great at giving ourselves, or better at giving ourselves, self-praise. Self-care and self-praise is hugely important. I mentioned the tip earlier about noticing 1 thing each day you've done well. And finally, and I know there's discomfort that may come with this. Remember, discomfort equals growth, by the way. Be all open and authentic with how you're feeling. I know that's difficult sometimes, but share with loved ones if you are struggling. Do not sit in any shame. Do not be in denial below that line. Sit in the discomfort of having those conversations. Manage upwards where you need to do with your leader. You are in your power by doing that. And that's a great place to be.
Thank you. Oh, wow. I mean, 3 absolutely powerful responses from each of you, all from your own personal angles as well, which I think is phenomenal. We're literally, a couple of minutes away from the hour. So I want us to say thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed this topic. It's obviously been a bit of a special lift up on menopause because, we do believe that this is such an important topic that we've needed to cover, so much so that if it's fair for me to say, I think Anna and Sarah, there might be a little bit more of a collaboration as well between the 2 of you in the UK around how you can join forces from a high performance and from a biological menopause perspective, which I'm super excited to hear about in the near future. But for any of you that have not, got connected to Anna, who obviously owns and has set up 80, please do so. Same with Sarah and WomenWise, a phenomenal organization, great website, and Lynn, who's got a wealth of experience in industry and is also now CEO of her own business, healthcare wise. So please get connected. That's what this group and community is all about, is leveraging off the relationships in which we can harness. So thank you to the audience as well for joining us. You've been super interactive. Thanks as ever. This is obviously a recorded live broadcast, so we can share this and push it out across LinkedIn for you to rewatch, or if you want to share with any known associates, colleagues that you think would be interested, then let's just continue spreading the word. It's really important, and let's hope this initiative carries on kicking off and getting more out there in the workplace as well. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody. And I will see you again from another Lift Up Live perspective. I think it's actually going live next week, but that's going to be launched within the next 24 hours. But thank you all, Sarah, Lynn, Anna. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care.
Thank you, Louise.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.